Hi, it's Eric here talking with famous people. Beau's here. Famous Beau, host Beau, whatever you want to call him. He's here and he's talking to me about me gaslighting him, trying to get him to change his beliefs. So, okay, you believe that there's something that I'm trying to get you to not believe. What is it you think you believe that I'm trying to get you to not believe?
That there are periods of moral development where institutions become less powerful.
I mean, I don't think I ever disputed the fact that there are periods of time where certain institutions might become less powerful. I rejected the notion that there's a strengthening and weakening cycle for governance in general because it is always thickening, right?
Yes, but I think that the focus or the central pressures of what we should be focusing on changes throughout different periods.
Things a good change? You're referring to historicism, right?
Huh?
Oh, look, Zachary,
Are you referring
a
to
little
dialectical?
background. Hold on, a little background for you before you dive right into this. Is that Zachary and Beau and I had a couple of throwdowns last night or something like that. And I think it was last night. And then there was another video after he left where the rest of us sat there and talked about the previous throwdown. And there was discussion of why Beau was not being very responsive to certain things or not responding particularly well. And he's now said, "Well, Eric, you're gaslighting me. You're just trying to get me to change my beliefs." I don't think I'm trying to get anybody to change any beliefs personally, but that's what he said. And I don't know why you
Come
mean the word
on.
gaslighting.
Don't you want people to change their views, though?
I do not want people. My goal is not to get people to change their beliefs. It's to get them to change how they argue.
Well, back and well, I mean, I'm kind of familiar with, well, based on seeing your meme feed on Facebook a while back, Beau, and from what you said, do you ascribe to dialectical materialism?
Uh, I have a lot of issues with how that would actually play out in a world of like individuality for or independence to the atomization of the or the just the independence of something. So I have confusions on how they resolve their struggles through material frameworks. I don't know how framework would congeal into the actual ideology of dialectics besides just seeing the effect of it. We would only see the outcome of what are the effects of certain debate styles or dialectics within the community. So it's not as if we can directly observe dialectical materialism. It's that I think we use it as a framework to look at higher processes that are going on in the community.
Right.
So we're seeing
Well,
how the
wait,
debates
hold
are
on. I would
framed.
like to get back though for a second to the central thesis here, which is that I'm gaslighting you and trying to get you to change your opinions. Are you still standing by those claims or what?
I mean, I just use it as kind of to prod at you a little bit, but whatever.
I mean, Beau, my point is that's your attitude about all of your points. That as soon as you start pushing on it, you just be like, "Well, I'm saying something different, right?" And then you say, "I'm gaslighting you to change your beliefs."
because
You don't have any beliefs.
because I'm not debating it. I'm trying to have a dialectic,
Which is what?
which
That's
is
where,
just a conversation.
well, I mean, doesn't that
Trust.
imply, though, that there would be some sort of, conclusion to the dialectic?
Yes, and that would be that moral attitudes change.
Justin, you want to get in on this?
Oh no, I was just saying it's very important to know the difference between dialectic and debate because you're a debate coach.
Hey, Justin, just because I ask a question doesn't mean I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I'm a long time listener, Justin, by the way.
Huh? What?
Long time no see.
Hey Zach, you're still looking very cute.
Good one, Justin. All right. Good job there. I like that. So anyway, Beau, the point is, the idea behind actual dialectic and the distinction between dialectic and rhetoric is that it's intention based. Okay, it's not about how you are arguing; it's about why you are arguing. It's not about not arguing; it's about arguing for the right reasons. Okay, so this you're using a lot of fancy words a lot of the time, and when I try to get you to explain it in simple terms, like I just did, you won't
I
do
just
it.
explained it in one word, actually. I explained crisis as a war.
Right. So then I asked you to tell me how many crises there were, and if that was the same number as numbers of wars, and how many generations there were, because your central thesis, if you recall, was that these things were linked together inexorably. And then when I actually said, well, if they are, then shouldn't it be the same number? You just pivoted away from it. You didn't even.
It doesn't go by generation. It doesn't go by generation. It goes about historical recordings of the effect of events.
Right.
So once
that's your new point. That's your new point.
That goes into what I was saying before. It's still constant.
Dude, when I respond to this new point, you'll have another new point.
Yes, and then it keeps congealing into one another. That's how dialectics work.
But see, here's the problem with you. What you don't quite understand is dialectic doesn't absolve you from not attending to contradictions. In fact, real dialectic says, I'm not going to be defending the position when Eric points out a contradiction. I'm going to say thank you for helping me, figure it out. That's the difference.
You just want a false negative.
Your words don't mean anything.
See, exactly. It's a negative.
What are you talking about?
You're just negating my statement.
Okay, am I negating? Okay, so you're saying I'm just negating your statements, right? But really what I'm actually doing, if we look at the mechanics of it, is I'm asking you a question about it, and you're not answering the question.
What question, then?
Do I really want to play this game again, Beau?
We can play all day. I'm ready.
I mean, here's a point, right? So last night when we were talking, you started with the notion that the crises alternate with generations of awakening and generations of crises, right?
Not exactly, but
that was your initial thesis, though. Those were the words you used.
There are periods where institutions are.
Did you use those words or not?
But I explained it more thoroughly.
Thank you for demonstrating my point.
I explained it more thoroughly the second time.
Thank you for demonstrating my point. Okay, listen. You keep trying to pivot away from simple reality. You made a thesis that linked generations to this thing you're talking about, these awakenings and crises. And when I pointed out that it was mathematically impossible, you pivoted away from it. Then when I pointed out you couldn't define awakenings, you got upset. And that's okay. I don't mind getting upset.
But I defined it perfectly. I said anything that causes moral challenges.
You failed to answer the core question, which is how can we distinguish between the police union claiming it's having an awakening and your oppressed group of choice having an awakening? You failed to distinguish between those two things.
The event of being acknowledged of that there was a moral crisis, that leads to an awakening. But that doesn't mean
acknowledgement by whom?
That doesn't mean both sides are awakening. It's just that they're being they're both being involved.
How to tell apart? How to tell apart?
Huh?
How to tell apart?
Between one is reactionary and one is one is setting forth an agenda.
So as soon as my anti-oppression group has an agenda, it becomes the bad guy.
Once you have an agenda, that becomes an awakening.
So how do we tell the difference between so awakenings can be any kind of movement for any reason towards anything, is that right?
Moral challenges.
So answer my question. How do you determine the difference between An
You
awakening.
can say even the revolution that you're saying that you want to impose
What
is that we should
revolution?
have less
I'm
state
saying.
power. We should have less state power, the non-revolution, so that you can say that in itself is a moral dilemma that needs an awakening.
Okay, but you see, your initial thesis was that this alternated with generations. A point you made several times by saying I'm such a Gen Xer, that I'm displaying the behavior of being a Gen Xer because this behavior of awakening and being a crisis generation alternates, and that I'm some intermediate generation and stuff like that. Now, when I asked you,
you're just very cynical and practical about everything.
Beau, okay, at
Why
some
can't you just
point,
take the theory and look at the theory and enjoy it?
Beau. So can you tell them apart? Can you tell apart an awakening from something else? Do you have a criterion?
I just did.
What's the criterion?
War versus moral challenges.
That's not a criterion.
That is a
Criterion would sound like this. You can tell
If there's
an
a
awakening
war-
because
if there's a
individuals having an
war-
awakening behave like thus and the other individuals behave thusly. Like that kind of a thing. Give me an actual
if there's
criterion.
If there's a war, that is a breaking down of social order, and in an awakening, that social order gets congealed into something new.
Who's awakening from what?
It's just an expression. You don't even need to take it as if it's some great transcendental experience.
So
It's just
are you
used
saying
to-
anything or not? Are you
We're
saying
just
something
saying
or
that
not?
We're just saying that there's moral development within a community.
And also there's air in a community. There's trees. There's cars. We
Yeah,
don't
it's all
list
there.
all the stuff there is in a community. Do you have any point at all?
It's not about debate, though. This is about getting to the truth of the matter.
Beau, first of all, you are disinterested in the truth. Entirely disinterested in it.
No, I'm not at all. I think you are. I think you just like to debate.
Beau, if you were interested in the truth, you wouldn't run away from me pointing out contradictions.
I'm not. I told you directly. I answered it multiple times.
You didn't. You can't tell me. You can't explain to me why the police union is not an awakening.
They are involved in an awakening, but that doesn't mean that all the people there are going to be awakened to some transcendental thing. They're just going through
How
moral
do you know if
challenges.
someone's awakening or not?
Huh?
How do you know if someone's awakening or not?
It's not a state of being.
So
It's not
what
as
the
if
fuck
you're-
is it? What are you saying?
It's that it's the transition between what an ideal is for someone else and being that ideal being imposed on society.
Okay, so fine. So is it any law then? Any passage of any laws in awakening?
I mean,
I think it would probably.
the law is the main development of the social dialectic.
Well, can you give us an example of a period in history where that has happened, and one of those awakenings have achieved something, like concrete results that we can look at and be like, okay, that was a result of that. I imagine an example would be like the French Revolution, right?
Yeah, that'll be definitely one. And Nazism was the high of the German awakening.
I would think that would be more like German nihilism. You think?
Yeah, but they kind of like tried to rise above that. They used that as fueling for their.
It was fueling, for sure.
So is any social movement an awakening? Or not?
It doesn't need to be an awakening. It's just it can awaken people to certain ideals. It doesn't need to do that, but it can cause that effect.
So what's your point about awakening?
It doesn't need to be some transcendental thing. It's just that we change our prescriptions for society. That we flush out the old and put in the new every so often.
I mean, that happens on a continuing basis.
Yes.
That's the point, I think.
So what's the point? Are you just describing an aspect of the status quo?
It's just happened. Yes, I'm describing it. It's just something that's been happening, like at a more frequent pace. That's been more congealing with other nations. So we plan it.
Who plans it?
We as institutions do.
Which institutions?
The academic institutions.
Plan what?
Events for seasonal activities and seasonal, like,
So
like
let me
just,
get this straight, Beau. Oh, let me get this straight. So far, what you've told me is that communities experience responses to problems where sometimes they act and sometimes they don't. And schools and shit hold seasonal events. Fantastic. That's spectacularly informative.
I mean, it's
Here's how I would describe it. If I were arguing,
explains what we're in right now.
I would describe it as this: there are if you look back over the course of civilization, especially like the West, for example, you can view it as a sort of organism where there has been evolution and change in the general ideologies and the consensus of thought throughout the society with the individuals. And if you look at a particular instance in time, you can notice, for example, the French Revolution, since that was brought up earlier. The French Revolution wasn't just something that happened on a social scale. It affected a lot of the philosophy at the time. It affected the academics. It affected everything. And it's you can examine all aspects of society to see how certain ideals can affect change on a massive scale. So is that what you're explaining, Beau?
Yeah, exactly. That was really good, actually.
Well, there's no doubt that people's metaphysical states have a massive are the determinant factor in what happens with social policy and public policy. There's no doubt about that, and it's always been so. Or the reason we had kings was because there was a time in which people were in those places. It's geographically linked as well. Had a high tolerance for subjugation. Now you can create that. Look at North Korea now, right? So this is why I'm a little bit resistant towards the notion that there's a steady pattern we can look to, because it really depends on the place and stuff like that. However, I do agree with you entirely that individuals in a free and fair society which have access to open discourse go through a process of improving each other's cognition through discourse in an open forum, and ultimately better the species in that fashion.
Well, I think that I don't think it necessarily needs to have open discourse. I think that because if you look like the French Revolution, for example, I don't think that they were regularly like going down to the peasants like, "What do you think about this? Like, do you have any like profound insights into like how we ought to run society or anything?" So I don't think it was necessarily like open discourse. I think it's just something that sort of it's almost like a cultural phenomenon that happens. That I think that certain figures have looked at and can identify trends in it, and that might explain why it might have happened.
Yeah, we're not doing it to predict the future. We're doing it to look at what happened already.
I mean, I would guess that the French Revolution had a lot to do with all the starvation. But
it wasn't like a lot of things like the income equality and stuff was getting like really bad, and then the peasants pretty much being treated like shit. Honestly,
at the end of the day, if you got a peasant class that's starving, then you're failing to give them even the minimum. You're failing to provide a system that allows them to attain even the minimum that you could threaten them with something worse. You know, look, if I'm already going to starve to death, there's little impetus for me to be cooperative.
Yeah, you can't really deny also the role of probably the Enlightenment in the Revolution as well.
I mean, I agree with you guys.
Yeah, that's why I was saying like
I'm not disagreeing with it.
Like a lot of like ideas where you can see them it happen in a massive scale. You know, like it affects every aspect of the civilization, which I think is really interesting.
The thing is, currently, I think that the enlightening of the species, which is what's happening, is very much geographically specific, right? So, if you're in the West and you're accessing American media, you are going to display a level of consciousness that is on one kind of a spectrum. Either like this kind of discourse on one end of it, and this sort of like let's build a wall kind of discourse, but even cruder than that. I don't want to even say that has any possible credence. You know, like let's just nuke the whole Middle East and be done with it kind of arguments and stuff like that. That kind of stuff is going to be the low end of the spectrum in this context, and the high end of the spectrum is going to sound something else. In other contexts, though, the high end of the spectrum has a much lower ceiling because they've not evolved in a free discourse kind of a environment, I think.
Neither did the Nazis.
Nazis, what about them?
They didn't have a free discourse environment, but they still had awakening.
Well, see, this is why I was kind of trying to pin you down on what that means, because to me,
There's a lot of rhetoric by Hitler saying that he's causing an awakening within the nation.
okay, but see, this is why I wanted to pin you down on what it meant, because if an awakening is any kind of social movement, then, you know, what...
We shouldn't look at it as peaceful. It's not a peaceful thing. It's recycling. It's recycling the old ideologies.
It's not, though.
Well,
But-
I don't think that Nazism was a recycling of any old ideology. If you're talking about the appropriation of Nietzsche and nihilism, I think that it really was a misappropriation, not really recycling. If they really wanted to recycle it, Nazism would never have started because, Nietzsche's philosophy really does not talk about Nazism in any way, does not support Nazism in any way. Like, you look at his work on ressentiment, right? Nazism is literally ressentiment personified. Okay, there's no one that can, I don't think anybody really buys that, in the modern day, that Nazism is an appropriation of Nietzsche or a
What does
recycling of an
Ressentiment say?
ideology.
What does Ressentiment say? I've never heard of that guy.
I mean, they're trying to oppress the...
Wait, hold on, Beau. I want to answer my question first. Justin, what does Ressentiment say?
Ressentiment isn't a person.
What is it?
It's, in English, it'd be resentment.
What is it? What are you citing, or what? Are you...
It's from
It's
from some of Nietzsche's works.
You
Yeah,
always
it's from
use-
Nietzsche's.
Oh, okay, fine, gotcha.
I mean,
It sounded like you were
it's just-
doing a debate citation. Go ahead, Beau. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
It's just the suppression and directing of class wars so that we can have new, institutions. So
Directed by whom?
Huh?
Directed by whom? Hey, Spec.
It doesn't matter anymore. I mean, the individual is still pretty anonymous within the whole process.
Well,
So-
you need to have a directing agent if you want to have a direction of class, class warfare. If you really want to define Nazism as class-based, which I think is another discussion in of itself.
It's that they're trying to create a harmonious society through the repression and direction of class war. It's that you're using it against itself.
Who?
So who's saying this?
I am. That's what I think fascism is.
You mean in Nazi Germany or now?
Any kind of fascism. That's my general definition of fascism.
Are you saying it's happening now?
It's violence for its violence sake.
Are you saying it's happening now?
I mean, it's happening. Fascism still exists. I'm sorry to say.
So-
We didn't get rid of it with the Nazis.
Okay, so make some claims here then. Don't just dance around.
I don't know.
So what are you claiming? What are you saying?
I'm not claiming anything. I'm just saying these things.
Why then?
Why not?
I could sit here and go, yep, clouds are made out of water. Mountains mostly comprised of dirt. Zachary, can you think of any facts to state? Or some questionable sort of facts to state sort of as facts, but not really stand by them for a second? Are pumpkins jack-o'-lanterns? I'm not sure. You are both. You're trying to have both ways. Trying to eat your cake and eat it too. You want to position things in the fashion of a debater. You want to position things in the fashion of position statements. You want to make claims, but you want to engage in dialectic, which means you don't want to be called for your bullshit. That's what you mean by dialectic. That's not what I mean by dialectic.
I mean, didn't you agree that all of this wasn't bullshit, though?
No, I don't agree. It's not all bullshit if he's not defining anything. I mean, if you define an awakening as anything, and you define the impacts as anything, then fantastic. Yeah, anything's anything. Okay, great.
Let me ask something then that might lay on a claim here. Would you say that the process of a dialectic is necessary and it'll happen again, Beau?
What do you mean?
Well, do you think that that the process could repeat itself. Like we obviously have an end of the process that the dialectical, that at least in the Hegelian sense, or maybe even in Marx's sense of
I think
material.
through the struggle, new struggles arise.
Hmm. Do you think that it was there's a necessary end to it though, or do you think that won't be able to exist?
I'm very against a final solution.
Are you advocating for any course of action or making any concrete prediction about the future?
I don't know, constant intellectual warfare. That's what I believe.
But you're not engaging in warfare if you're making no predictions about the future and nor advocating anything.
We are making predictions about the future, but we're not saying that they're going to come true. We're saying that this is how it's been throughout the society so far.
So we're going
You have to have a sense of realism to us.
Sort of
And
predictions. The key point being that they're not falsifiable. We want to make sure we understand that we're not going to say anything falsifiable, right?
I predicted the Industrial Revolution, but that's all.
You backwards predicted the Industrial Revolution?
No, that's what I predict. There'll be the biogenetic one, but that's all I predict.
Okay, fine. I know, we had that discussion. But the point is, why do you keep trying to pivot away from everything that you're saying?
I don't know what you mean by that.
The point. Here's my take on it. You've been reading a lot of critical theory stuff.
Yeah, I have. I know.
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
I don't know. I think Hegel was onto something with the whole his version of dialectics. But I mean, part of the things I have wrong with Hegel, where his like famous line, what is it? What's real is rational. What's rational is real. I think that implies that every new process implemented, or every new perhaps awakening, is a rational one that is necessary to get to the next step.
I think we raised the bottom of what's socially acceptable. So right now we know that certain arguments are not socially acceptable to make in defense of a policy advocacy. If I were to say, well, we should engage in this policy for the country because my horoscope says X, nobody would. The general response to that would be, that's not an acceptable kind of argument to make. However, that's about the limit of people's understanding of argumentation in general, as the populace, right? We have a very low expectation of what constitutes a good argument or what constitutes an argument at all in defense of something. And so, to me, that's the issue more than anything else, is people have long been taught by school and every place else that political stuff is just your opinion and that everyone's entitled to their opinion. In fact, it's your civic duty to be a good citizen to have a political opinion.
I saw this one picture on Facebook a while back that was like, it was a list of things you don't have to apologize for, and on there was like, your political views, and I was just like, ooh, I don't know about that.
Right. So, I mean, the thing is, I don't think you have to apologize for them. I think you have to defend them.
Well, I mean, it depends on the semantics of apology. I mean, generally, if you say like, if someone's like a libertarian apologist, they're gonna have argumentation that defends a position like that, Yeah,
that's a different meaning of the word apology. I think in that case it meant like you don't have to say I'm sorry for believing this, but I just do. That's the point. It's like that's the message we teach everybody is, it's okay to have this to believe that it's good to do X, Y, or Z to everybody because it's just your opinion. It's just your opinion.
Yeah, that's some dangerous words, but it's hard for me to call people out on that when it's like, I take it when people say that, they're like, I just don't want to get into this discussion right now. And it's hard for me to go past that and be like, no, I'm going to make you have this discussion. And there are times in the past where I have jumped on the opportunity and been perhaps overly aggressive and burned a few bridges, but,
Shit happens. Alright, let's end this video. Thanks for watching. I'm going to finish people. Let's start another one.